Hey everyone, and welcome to our LowCode Marathon. Pleased to be joining you today. We have a great 10 days of activities lined up to guide you through how to build a successful digital-first organization utilizing low-code technology. By way of introduction, I'm Eric Hale. I'm Director of Sales Enablement here at Creatio, and I'll be your host throughout the event. So again, I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm seeing in the chat we've got people coming in from all over. We got hi from Thailand, Italy, Turkey, New York. So it's just wonderful to see everybody here, and thank you for joining. So as we move into the agenda for our first day of the LowCode Marathon, as I mentioned, this is going to be a full 10 days of activities, but we wanted to kind of go through and take a look at the agenda for day one. And this is really how we create a low-code company. And we've aligned some key industry experts to come online and share thoughts and ideas on just how to make that happen. So let me just quickly go through the agenda. Our first session will be our trendsetter session, and we're privileged to be joined by Isaac Sokolik, who'll be talking about driving digital. Our second section, hey there's Isaac, how are you? Excellent. Yeah, our second session will be our keynote interview. We'll be joined by our founder and CEO, Catherine Kostareva, as well as my good friend, Andy Zambito, Chief Sales Officer of the Americas. And we'll be having a great discussion from Catherine and Andy. In our third session, we'll have a practical discussion, the do's and don'ts of things that you should be doing and things you shouldn't be doing throughout your digital transformation. We'll be joined by Alan Joen from Collier Pickard. So we'll be having a great conversation with Alan as well. And then finally, I'll be leading a discussion with my friends from our channel partners on digital circles. So we'll have a roundtable discussion on the challenges of digital transformation. So should be a lively discussion. I've done many webinars with each of these individuals, and there's never a shortage of anything to say. So let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be an exciting day. I'd like to remind everybody that if you have questions for our panelists or our speakers throughout this event, please utilize the chat section section of the platform, and I'll do my best to convey those to our speakers as we go along. We'll also be having a series of Q&A at the end of each session as well. All right, so perfect. We have our trendsetter session, and it is, again, my privilege to introduce Isaac Sokolik. Isaac is joining us from his home north of New York City, so we'd like to welcome you, Isaac. And just to give a little background, Isaac, I'm not sure there's anything you haven't done. Successful CIO, author, influencer. Just an amazing background, and we're very privileged to have you on the marathon today.
Eric, thank you for having me. Thank you, Creatio, for having me at this wonderful event. Welcome to all the low coders who are getting ready to do your marathon. I've been a big fan of low-code platforms for 2 decades now. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through my keynote today. But Eric, you have a wonderful lineup, a lot of good learning activities, and I hope everybody takes a break from your activities and your normal work and spend some time learning with you guys in terms of some of the things that you guys can do and some of your capabilities. You can see a little bit about my background here, just to round it out. I've been a CIO, I've been a CTO, I've done a lot of product development. Along the journey, I did a lot of writing and speaking that led me to write a book called Driving Digital that published in 2017 and became a bestseller in 2019. And of all the things I love to do is I love sharing what I've learned, and I love being out in the field learning more and being able to share it. So that's what I'm going to do today, is share a little bit of how I got to Driving Digital, and a lot more in terms of how everybody on this video and this learning can use some of the tools and techniques that I applied first as a CTO, then as a CIO, and now as president of a company called Star CIO, where we help organizations drive digital transformations. So what's always been on the top of my mind is digital leadership, right? That magic that starts at the top, that works its way down across the organization, but also works its way up. And what I mean by that is leaders being able to collaborate with people working in the field, working with customers, working in marketing and technology, finding out what customers want, finding out what the market is asking them to do, and looking to evolve the products and services that they are offering their constituents. And so that search for digital leadership started in 2016 for me. I was interviewed by Forbes at the time. I did a Gartner webinar, a Gartner workshop, and they mentioned this word called digital transformation. And I said, I've been doing digital transformation my entire career. I've been helping organizations do more with data and technology, with workflow, and becoming more digitally sound in terms of the way they're collaborating. And so it was at one of these events back in 2016 that I came up with the outline for the book. You could see it here. It's all about becoming smarter, faster, safer, and innovative. We're going to talk a lot about that over this keynote. And you could see some of the elements that I speak about in the book, things that you should be well understood for those of you who are using low-code platforms, things like citizen development, workforce enablement, particularly on the sales and marketing side, being more agile across the organization, not just in IT, using data and analytics to really drive the business, and focusing on customer experience and sales and marketing intelligence. When you put all those things together and you're really listening to what the market and customers are telling you, you have a great chance at evolving your organization. And that makes me think about what digital leadership is going to look like over the next 10 years, particularly in 2021, 2022, as we're gotten this pivot from COVID, from hybrid working, from this new ability to use digital technologies across the organization. And if you do pick up a copy of my book, this is the lens that I leave the book with. It's what I call the driving digital lens. And you could see it's about connecting people with technology, with process in the middle. It's about changing your business models to digital ecosystems and working with customers around experiences and innovation. And what I like to tell people about this digital lens, particularly I do a lot of talks with the technology side of the house, the CIOs, the chief technology officers, and the digital officers. And what I tell them is, look, when you're implementing digital technologies, it's not just about efficiencies and quality and taking cost out. It's really about using technical capabilities to grow the business. And so I really like hearing about customer-facing technologies, about ways to make sales more enabled, to work with customers, about putting up more capabilities to automate in digital marketing. And that to me is really what digital transformation is all about. Now, when I do these talks, and I can't wait to do these talks in person, and I hope to start being able to do that at the end of this year, I usually get 3 different types of questions from people about digital transformation. And these were questions that were coming to me early on, but they continue to evolve because anyone who's investing in digital transformation and digital technologies knows that this isn't something that you do in a 6-month project and it's one and done. So the first question people ask me is, how big is this? And I went searching for some research around this, and Deloitte has some really good research that suggests that even those on the lower side of the maturity curve are able to see 15% revenue and profit growth as they improve their digital maturity. And those who are that are more mature are able to see 45% growth. That to me is amazing. When we started this 4 or 5 years ago, it was very easy to get trapped up and say, oh, this isn't going to make a big change to our companies. And what you're finding is as companies become more mature, particularly in the areas of sales and marketing and innovation, the things that are growing the business, you're starting to see that lift. In terms of how long, about half of this survey from Forrester and from Blake Morgan, the Blake Morgan Forrester one said about 56% take about a year or two to start seeing business impact from their investments. And Blake Morgan had some examples where it could take organizations several more years. And the reason is depends on what you call your MVP. It depends how long it takes things to roll out. And it depends on the size of your business and how many different areas that you're evolving to become more digital. So we're on a journey, and we're not just one and done in 2021. We're going to be doing this well into this decade. A third thing people ask me is, what should we really focus on? And the first thing I tell people is focus on the collaboration between technology, data, and business. I think it's critically important to have IT leaders involved. And when you look at what IT leaders are doing, this is coming from IDG State of the CIO. They're spending their time on both sides of the house, the cost side in terms of automating business, and the front side of the house in terms of automating the customer journey and improving it and developing it. So those are the three things and three areas that organizations are really focused on. And this is common across industries. So the question is, what happens if you fall behind? You know, what happens if you're not running at the pace of other industries or others in your industry? And I like to tell people, I had a front row seat to this. One of my first startups going back into the late 90s was helping newspapers go from print to digital. And you could see in the years from 1996 to 2001, as the internet grew market, newspapers grew with it. But then when there was an inflection point, and I think COVID is actually another inflection point, those who hadn't really modernized their platforms, hadn't become digital, hadn't evolved their business models, in the newspaper industry, it became a very steep fall after that. I think that's still falling. They had multiple waves of disruptors hitting them. And that's why I think it's so important for organizations to be really thinking about going smarter and faster through this, because you never know when something's going to happen like a COVID, and you have to start really thinking about how to become a digital and a low-code platform type of company. So let's talk about this, right? Everybody's doing digital. Everybody is doing some of the same things. What some of the groups aren't doing is looking for what I call force multipliers. That means putting multiple things together, multiple practices, technologies, people together, where the combination gives you that force multiplier, and you're actually driving transformation faster than your peers. You know, when you talk about transformation, everybody is looking for the things that are going to transform the culture. That means going past the way you used to do things, going past silos, finding ways to collaborate, recognizing that status quo isn't good enough, and looking for ways to bring the entire organization on the journey of changing and evolving how you're working as a business and how you're collaborating every 6 months, right? This is not something that's going to say what you're doing today is going to be good enough in 2022. We're going to constantly ask questions and reevaluate it. Now at Star CIO, we've found a way to measure transformative culture, and we do it in 4 dimensions. And you've heard me say this already. It starts really about doing 2 things at the same time, not just by going fast. We know we can go really fast, and not just about being smart. It's really about finding the balance between being smart and using data and analytics, but also making decisions without perfect data, without having all the answers in front of you. And that really comes down to how well you're experimenting as an organization, learning and using that feedback to evolve your processes. The second 2 areas come down to innovation innovation and safety, right? We want to bring new capabilities to our organization. We want to showcase to our customers ways that we're differentiating, but we need to do this in a safer way and a secure way, particularly in industries that are where human safety is involved. So if you want a transformative culture, these are the 4 attributes that I advise organizations to focus on. And how do you do this? Well, it starts at the top. I said that digital leadership is really important. The top of the house needs to make sure that the organization is aligned on strategy, vision, goals, priorities, and KPIs. And out of all these things, I think vision is most important. Why is that? Because when you bring teams together, whether it's a 4-person team or a 40-person team, they need to know what the North Star looks like. Where are you heading? And that's going to evolve over time as you get smarter and you're learning, but to be aligned in terms of direction of where you're going and why you're doing certain things and what customer segments and what are the value propositions and why an investment is strategic. These are all important factors in putting into vision statements. And I've done a lot of writing and speaking of late around this, because as we evolve what our digital transformation strategies are, we need to make sure our organizations understand what those new visions are. Now, once the organization is aligned, then we need to understand who and how we're going to go on this journey. We're not just talking about people in our organization. We're talking about bringing expertise from partners, using freelancers, but also investing in the learning that our organization's doing from customers, but also learning around new skills. In terms of the how, we'll talk a lot about Agile in this talk, but it's really about using practices that enable experimentation. And that's why Agile is so important. That's why becoming data-driven is so important. And even automation, right? Automation is something that's going to take a lot of the repetitive tasks, the orchestration that we do, take that away from people's time and enable us to use more of our time to listen to customers and do more innovative things with them. Lastly, we're going to talk about the platforms that make this successful and how to use platforms and use technologies and infrastructure as a way to bring our organization together in terms of how we're evolving our digital capabilities. Now, to get your 2 times multiplier, to get your force multiplier, it's really about bringing these capabilities together, right? You can't just bring talent in without process. You can't have process in without technology. And so we're really trying to, again, do multiple things in collaboration together to be able to bring force multipliers together. So let's talk about that through a little bit deeper, right? Let's get beyond, transformative culture and share how organizations really do this. And the 2 places I want you to think about and put a lens to is what Agile means to your organization and what innovation means to your organization. So let's look at that from a lens, and let's look at some things that we know are not Agile and not innovation, right? Analyzing things for too long. I remember in the days of enterprises, we used to have to go through long processes to get investments, to be able to justify a 3-year return on investment, long-term longitudinal market research studies. And we know that that level of analysis is just going to force us to fall behind. So we know analysis paralysis isn't going to get us to become an agile or innovative organization. We also know that becoming a laggard and waiting for too long, waiting for our customers to come to our doorstep and say, you missed an opportunity, or you have problems with your experience, and they're screaming louder and louder, and maybe you don't even have the right tools and mechanisms in place to even hear those things. That's not going to get us to becoming an agile, innovative organization. So we know many of the pictures that look like we're falling behind and we're not agile, we're not innovative. Let's look at some of the things that are agile and innovative. And I like to look at some examples, starting with agile teams. What makes an agile team so successful is empowering them to commit to how much work they can get done, whether you're doing 1 or 2 week sprints. And I'm always looking for a multidisciplinary, diverse team to raise their hands and saying, we're going to figure this out together. So this is what an agile team looks to me. And then what an innovation looks to me is not just being able to deliver new capabilities to customers, but to have a sustainable practice of doing this over and over again. And you can see this data from Statista. The companies that you probably know already, but they do this through measurement, that have consistently delivered new innovation capabilities in different industries. So something very important to be able to do if you're going to continue to drive transformation and enable digital capabilities over the long period. So how do we do this? We have to break some fallacies. And the first fallacy is that people know what they want, okay? That we can really formulate requirements, that we understand exactly how to fulfill our vision, that we can build blueprints out that say exactly what a user experience needs to be. And that's the first fallacy. The second is that we can draw a Gantt-like timeline to get us from where we are today to where we want to be on our vision. Right? We know the world isn't perfect. We're going to learn along that journey. We're going to have changing requirements. We want to set up a process so that we can continue to learn from those experiences. And over the years, we've called that process agile. We've moved projects to a much higher level of success around them. But you can see we still have room to grow. Right? We still have ways to improve our agile delivery. So I want to share some examples of how to do this. And it starts with getting beyond agile, beyond what teams think of as a single sprint scrum, right? This is what agile means to most organizations, to most teams. They're starting at the beginning of the sprint. They're doing a bunch of rituals. They're getting to a review at the end, and then they're doing their retrospective. And that's really helps execution. It means teams are narrowly focused on what's been prioritized for them. But what we find is that in order to really get that digital lens around things, we need to apply Agile not in delivery, but also in planning, how we plan our initiatives, how we release new capabilities to customers, and how we monitor what comes out of this from customers. And this is really the heart of one of the programs that I've been building throughout my career. I call it Star CIO Agile. It's really about bringing Agile to deliver roadmaps, technology standards, and we do this through a continuous planning program. Every sprint, you're not just delivering stories, you're not just delivering releases every sprint, you're also planning your next few sprints ahead, and that's going to start giving you a picture of your roadmap. And we use techniques like estimation to be able to make sure that we prioritize the things that have the most value that are feasible. So just a little bit about one of my frameworks. And how do you get to a force multiplier around this is a few areas. Number one, teams are not just technology or not just marketing or not just data scientists. They're really truly multidisciplined. Again, they're planning and delivering at the same sprint. So that's what continuous planning is all about. They're not only empowering teams with self-organizing practices, but you're also building standards and centers of excellence, right? This is how you have uniform customer experiences. This is how you have better data collection because you're starting to create practices that enable that. And you're using planning and estimating and feedback to start building roadmaps are. Because while teams can focus on what they're doing every sprint, businesses transform by being able to understand where's the organization going and how they're going to achieve their visions. So that's the first area of force multiplying that I'd like to share with you. The second area is really around low code. And as I explained to Eric when we started, I've been doing low code for my entire career. I've been quoted by CXO Talk and others about it being one of the most important tools that technology has to empower their organization with. And in itself, it can become a force multiplier. I've been writing, again, for 15 years. I have over 700 articles. If you want access to my dashboard that has all of the articles that I've ever written. Find me as NY Ike on Twitter. I'll send a link out for everybody to this dashboard. This dashboard and all the integration behind it are built on low-code tools. Just to give you a sense, over the last 5 years, I've been doubling down the amount of writing I've been doing about low code as really a true platform enabler for organizations that are driving transformation. And there's a really good reason for it. I was brought up as a software developer. I love coding. I love solving problems. You know, it takes some skill and craft and science to be able to do this. But, you know, when you're building things with code, there's also a lot of scaffolding. It's a word we like to use in technology, the things that enable the technology teams to deliver with code. Things like building test-driven development environments, all the DevOps environments that we need. And then we're left with a question, is what we build maintainable? If I write 1,000 lines of code and I move on to work on another application, can somebody really support what I developed? Or are they going to have a hard time learning all that code that I had built? So just, there's a lot of pros to building code, but there are also some cons that we have to think about. Then I think about what it means to be working in a low-code environment like a Creatio. In this case, what you're seeing on the right-hand side is a way of doing a flow around lead generation. And what I love about this is a flow like this not only provides a capability, but it's self-documenting. If I'm working with one of my business partners and they say, how do you qualify leads? I can click into that and show that person what the business logic is around that. And if I bring on another developer, they have a visual tool to be able to understand and delve into what changes are required. So what are some of the pros? It's visual, it's open to be integrated with other platforms, it comes with templates as starting points, and often you're getting a out-of-the-box DevOps environment to work with. What teams need to ask questions around is, how do you create governance around how you build an end-to-end process around it, and focus on the types of work that are really going to bring value first. People ask me, how do you prioritize in low code? Well, prioritize the things that are most important, and then show that your platforms can deliver against this. So what is the low code multiplier around this? Well, number one, co-create. Instead of having one team create requirements and another team fulfill it, bring that team together, because you have an environment where you can test and experiment right with your stakeholders and see whether something that they're describing is really going to work. Create centers of excellence, right? Centers of excellence enable you to find ways to reuse, to build standards, and to create skill sets that go wide in your organization, and then leverage partners, right? Especially when you're starting out on a new platform, there's a lot of best practices that you could start out with, and partners is a really good way to get that force multiplier and say, let's get to that time to value, then let's start having our teams learn how to do this themselves, and then let's start building centers of excellence around this. Now, the last area I'm going to focus on in terms of finding force multipliers is really looking for transformations. And where I started is think through leadership, think through how you create a value proposition that people understand, make sure it's communicated. But what I also tell leaders is the number one reasons digital transformations fail is they're not listening to their employees, they're not engaging them, they're not empowering them to make their own decisions in self-organizing teams, and they're not using tools like low code to enable them to fulfill experiments and innovations. So how do we solve for this? Okay, first and foremost, transformations start by having a transformation calling. What are the big things that your organization is going to do over the next 6, 12, and 18 months that are going to move the needle, and make sure that you communicate what those big bets are. Make sure that more and more of your teams and your technologies and your processes are aligned to this, but more importantly, reduce the noise in areas that are less important. You know, when I talk to an organization that has 300 people and has 60 priorities, or an organization that has 2,000 people and has 200 priorities, I can already tell them, look, let's take a step back and start prioritizing, because you're not going to get all of this done if you try to get too many things done and your teams and your technologies are spread too thin. The last part of this is really focusing on changing both the business and the delivery model. And I do this with Agile, I do this with low code, and I do this with data-driven and self-service technologies. These are the baselines where I think organizations truly need to be able to evolve their organizations, and being able to put something out, whether it's an end user who is an employee or to a customer, find out what's working, what needs to change, what needs to be improved on, and use that feedback to go back and use your very versatile, very easy to use tools to go and evolve the experiences that you're putting in front of them. All right, so what is the force multiplier here? Again, using Agile and low code to rapidly innovate, using both automation and integration as a way to simplify what you're building, and then using people from across your organizations through learning, using partners, developing centers of excellence. And when you put all of that together, you start getting to being able to deliver on that digital lens, right? You're evolving your organization in terms of what you're delivering, what your business's models are, how you're working with customers, how you're handling new regulations as those change, and being able to experiment with things like new technologies and new data sources to deliver new capabilities. So I hope you learned a lot from my Driving Digital presentation today. I look forward to hearing about more what happens through the Low Code Marathon. If you want to learn more about all the leadership that I share, this is my blog. It's what I write for InfoWorld. It's my channel on YouTube, 5 Minutes with NY Ike. The best way to do that is through my newsletter that you see at the URL below. And then a little bit about Star CIO. We help organizations develop their centers of excellence. You can see they cover many of the areas that we talked about today, from innovation to Agile and to low code centers of excellence. And if you have any questions after this presentation, the best way to reach me is through Twitter at NYIke, NYIke on Twitter. Thanks, Eric. It's been great. And thank you, Creatio, for having me speak today.
Isaac, what an amazing, amazing presentation, and the chat is on fire with a lot of questions here. So before I jump into the questions themselves, there's a couple of comments that I really liked in here, and one comes from Melinda, and it's actually a kind of an analogy, and I just have to find it in the chat. Bear with me here a second, but the analogy really is about digital transformation being is like training for a marathon, no pun intended. And every lap around the transformation training track is 6 months, and it's continual. And I think that that is a nice analogy to exactly what we were talking about in your presentation. And the other comment that I had, nothing tells you that digital transformation and having a mature strategy is fundamental to any organization. The statistic that you throw up at the beginning of the presentation, revenue and profit growth, they recognize 15 to 45% higher profit growth with organizations that are more mature. That tells you this is what you need to focus on. So perfect. So if you're up for it, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions from the audience here.
Awesome. Love it.
All right, perfect. So the first two I'm going to actually combine because they're somewhat related. So question comes in and it says, what are the most important elements of digital transformation? And I'll tack on to that by saying, where do companies get started, right? What is the most important things that they should be focused on?
Yeah, it's a great question because what I tell folks is the worst thing you can do is not realize that you have to transform what you're doing. And you miss the starting gun, and it's much harder to run a marathon when you're, a few minutes behind and you have to play catch up. I think that's actually a really good analogy because what I tell organizations is you're going to feel that transformation fatigue, right? That, the 5th mile fatigue when you are running a marathon. I don't do marathons, I do centuries on bikes, but somewhere about 20% into it, you start feeling that fatigue and you have to paddle your way through it to get to that zone where you're really focused. But for organizations that are just starting out, I think it's really important to take a step back and look at customers and look at products and look at markets. If you're not starting any kind of transformation through the lens of what business that you want to be in, what markets you want to serve, what does the new competition look like? When I was working with newspapers, they saw their neighboring newspaper, in New York, the New York Times versus the Daily News versus the New York Post. Those were their competition, but their competition really wasn't that. It was eBay and Craigslist, and later on Facebook and Google, who are coming in with new capabilities that were very different, new ways to serve markets that were very different. You're seeing this across different industries, right? In banking, you're seeing, whereas 85% of banking were in branches 5 to 10 years ago, and now it's it's probably about 50% digital. So a big part of this is just starting with, what do I need to do different with my customers that I want to start as a set of experiments, right? It doesn't have to be a moonshot, particularly for lagging organizations. It's, where can I start doing some experiments and learning more about what customers need differently than what I'm doing today? And then when you start having a number of those experiments, then you can start your transformation journey. And I talk a lot about that in the book. That it's better not to have a strategy up front. It's better to start out with a bunch of experiments. And then as you start getting some data and some learning, then bring a group together and say, here's our formal strategy and vision of what we're trying to accomplish.
Which brings me into the next question, and it's kind of timely for that. Can you remind everybody how they can get the book?
Very easy. I have a convenient URL for it, driving-digital.com/purchase. And that will take you right to the Amazon page, at least in the US. Or you could just do look up my last name, Sacolick, Sacolick on Amazon, and you should be able to find the book. If you can't, find me on Twitter again, NYIke, and I will send you the links there as well.
Yeah, there's no excuse, audience. You can find that book.
It's only $7 on Kindle. It's a bargain.
There we go. There we go. Perfect. So the next question I have, Isaac, is really, and you touched on this quite a bit in the presentation. When we look at transformational strategies, what should a company's culture typically embrace, right? What does a company need to embrace as a culture to be effective in their digital transformation strategies?
Oh, wow. I think I could write a whole nother book on
that
one. So first and foremost, it starts with enabling more people in the organization to ask questions, right? You can't challenge the status quo without hearing sales, marketing, operations, technologists coming together in a very collaborative way and say, why are we doing this? What can we learn from a customer? How is a competitor doing something differently? So I think key tenet for anyone that's trying to transform is asking questions. The second thing that comes to my mind is, we used to call it fail fast. I actually don't like the word fail fast. I mean, say that to the CFO and say that to the board, and sometimes they get a little queasy around that. But a culture of experimentation and really rapid experimentation, right? Can we put something in front of customers, and it could be a wireframe all the way to a POC. It can be, doing A/B testing in your marketing exercises. It could have 3 sales groups coming out with 3 different pitches and trying to figure out which one is working. There's lots of ways to try experimentation and using that data to come back and learn from that experience. And I think the third part is really that data part. It's that being able to use technologies and tools in such a way that you're going to showcase the data, and when I tell companies, share the data first. Don't share the insight. Just show the data, because that individuals are going to look at a dashboard or look at a report and maybe interpret things slightly differently from their perspectives. Have a conversation around what insights are being drawn from it, and then start asking questions like, what actions do we want to take around this? So 3 different areas around transformation culture that I think are really important.
Perfect. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I loved when you said, you have to have that bottom up approach as well, because so many times when we look at digital transformation, it's important to have that top down approach as well, and someone delivering that message. But you can't forget that as well. It's when they meet in the middle is when we see successful transformation.
That's right.
Perfect. And I'm trying to find, there was another one in here that was very, very interested into, let's see here. Yes, all right. So let's see here. Do we have, do we see low code as a driver of change in organizations?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Look, the reason is, uh, people still have this perception in the organization that technology is hard. And the reality is technology is hard. Okay, it's not easy to build technology the right way the first time. It's not easy to build things using proprietary methods. And what I tell most leaders is, look, you hear about the innovations coming from Facebook and from Google and from Microsoft and Apple. Most of the companies on this call do not have the depth of technology skills and technology awareness to be able to do things the way they're doing it. So we look for ways that can deliver innovation, that can deliver integration and automation and workflow, but not necessarily have to do everything in a proprietary way and everything in a way that these other companies that are so technology savvy they can do. And that's really where low code fits a major problem statement for organizations. How can we put an MVP up in front of customers or in front of end users in that first sprint and start getting feedback? I have an article around this in InfoWorld just in the last few weeks that talks about when you're building applications out, for example, you used to go through, let's conceptualize it, let's build a wireframe out, let's build out the architecture. And so even though we're agile, we're still doing a lot of upfront work to make sure we're aligned over what we're building and how we're building it, what the experience is. But when I could start with a low code platform and say, let's go prototype something, let's go put this in front of 10 people and see what their feedback is. Are we heading in the right direction? And you know what? If you're not, you haven't really invested in. You could turn the switch off and go in a different direction. And if you are, then you have something that you can baseline and go after it. So, like I said, I've been doing low code for 20 years. I've been doing it across different platforms. I've built customer-facing platforms out of it. I've done citizen development where I've handed tools to people outside of IT as a CIO. I've built governance models around that so that it can continue to thrive. And I think this is one of the major game changers, particularly for medium-sized organizations that know they need a differentiator with technology and data, but can't do it the same way that Facebooks and Googles can do it.
Absolutely. And of course, coming from Creatio perspective, we agree with that. Absolutely. Well, Isaac, I think that brings us, to our time. I would like to thank you again. This has been very insightful. A lot of great questions coming in. Hopefully, our folks monitoring the chat helped you out answering some of those. But again, folks, buy the book, follow Isaac online. There's just a tremendous amount of experience and thought leadership that he brings to the table. So again, we've had a wonderful time having you here on our Low Code Marathon, Isaac, and we hope that you'll join us again at one of our future events.
I'd love that. Thank you again, Eric, and thanks to the entire Creatio team, and good luck on your low code learning over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you again. All right. Oh, we already had the Q&A, so I'm a little behind. Excellent. So that brings us into our next session. Our second session is going to be a great interview between our founder and CEO, Catherine Kostareva. Catherine obviously has been a promoter of low code for a long time now, and is really driving our organization towards enabling every company to become a low-code company. every person within that company to become a developer utilizing low-code tools. And she'll be joined today by my good friend, Andy Zambito, Chief Sales Officer of the Americas for Creatio. And yeah, we're going to be giving you an introduction to how to start creating a low-code company. What is it and why now? So I'd like to turn it over to Catherine and Andy, and you can have a change of voice here from mine. So Catherine and Andy, it's all yours.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Hello, Andy. Good to see you. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome to all the folks joining us today. Today is the exciting day one of the LowCode Marathon. We're so happy to have everyone join us today. And as you know, I'm joined today by Catherine Kostareva, the founder and CEO of Creatio. And the topic, obviously, for the entire marathon is around low-code company. And I think as we discovered in our survey that was recently released on the state of the low-code and no-code industry, there's obviously a lot of awareness out there about low-code and no-code and a lot of understanding of the benefits and promise of this as a technology, as a movement. But I don't know that there's a good understanding widely held about what it is to be a low-code company. So I thought that would be a perfect way for us to start the whole session and give you the opportunity to kind of share your view on what does it mean to be a low-code company in terms of people, processes, technology.
Absolutely. Would love to. That's, as you know, this is my favorite topic. So when you look at the organization and you actually talk to any executive or leader of the organization, and you ask this person who in the company owns your team, your people, their excitement, their engagement level, the answer is going to be, we own it. I own it as a leader of the unit, a leader of the business unit, a leader of the organization. When you ask the same question about the processes in the business unit or in the whole organization, you're going to hear exactly the same answer. As a leader, I own the processes in my business unit. However, when you ask questions about technology, you're most probably going to hear that my IT department owns the technologies that are being used in my organization. And that's the challenge that we see on the way of really becoming a digital first company, giving technology, business process automation tools in the hands of the knowledge workers, of the business users, and having IT people, IT experts, taking care of the more complex things like governance, like admin, like integrations, like access rights, you name it.
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to launch our first poll of the session. So for our audience, please be aware we're going to be launching a few polls throughout today's session and throughout all the other sessions. We will leave these polls open. They'll remain open for the entire session, so the results will be available to you at the end. And the first one will be really share with us, how far are you in your digital transformation journey, if you've begun at all? And then that'll be really interesting, I think, for us to see where that goes. I don't know, Catherine, do you have a thought as to how far our audience is going to be in this journey?
Actually, we do have the results of our survey that we conducted recently, you remember, among 1,000 organizations. And we actually had a question over there. We had a question about the percentage of business processes in the organization that people believe are fully automated and work seamlessly just thanks to the technology. Remember the answer, Andy?
About the percentage. Only about 10% were fully automated, if I recall.
Exactly. Only 10% fully automated and 30% not automated at all, which actually brings us to the phenomenal number, astonishing number of 90% of business processes being either not automated at all or just partially automated. So that's a huge gap, and that's a huge way forward to the digital first companies and building the digital first companies.
Do you see a gap in vision, or is it a gap in execution between the vision of getting there and the reality of doing it?
That's a fantastic question. That's actually I don't think there is a gap in vision from all the conversations I have with multiple customers and partners of Creatio. Do you remember 10 years ago when we were talking to the financial services organizations, everyone was trying to become a digital company, a software company. Banks started to call themselves software companies, actually. Mm-hmm. What I see today doesn't matter what industry we're talking to. It could be manufacturing, it could be wholesale, distribution, healthcare. Everyone is building a software company inside their organization, like making a software company. And we call it a low-code company. That's actually what we mean when we say a software low-code company. So in terms of the vision, I believe every organization that wants to thrive, it is there. Like everyone understands that digital first is definitely the way forward. The challenge actually is with the resources available. And when I am talking about the resources, I'm even not talking about financial resources. I'm actually talking about skilled resources, about personnel available inside the organizations to actually automate and build those business processes inside the organizations.
So is that what you view the biggest challenge at making this transformation journey? Because I agree with you, by the way. I'm old enough to have been through several of these transformations, and we saw this with mobile. We saw this with a number of other areas. When you talk about the challenges and skilled resources, is that the biggest challenge that you see for these organizations?
100%. And actually here, I should again refer to the survey that we conducted. Do you remember this number? 43% of people who have, actually it's 430 people, said that lack of skilled resources is the biggest challenge on the way of digital transformation. So that's exactly what we hear from the market. That's exactly what we see over there.
I think this would be an interesting poll to see if the audience knows, as I know you've shared before, the actual scope of this challenge. So we're gonna put another poll up there about how many knowledge workers are there in the world that need to be satisfied as part of this latest movement. It's interesting, Catherine. I don't think until you actually see it in numbers, I think we all intuitively know, sure, there's a lot out there, but I don't know that the scope is really felt until you actually see it in black and white. I don't know. What's your thought?
Right. And again, we're talking about a huge number here, right? We're talking about like 25-30% of the world population being those knowledge workers and having a need in enterprise software to automate their business processes, right? So we're talking about, can I say it out loud? Can I say the number already?
Yeah, go for it. We're starting to see some responses come in, so let's.
Okay, good. It's 1.7 billion knowledge workers in the world that use at least one business apps when they do their work, when they do their job. And the demand, actually, talking about the demand for the business apps, the current demand is 500 million business apps to be created globally, again, to satisfy the demand that comes from those knowledge workers. So it's actually a huge scope that needs to be automated somehow. That is why I'm saying that the vision is there. The challenge actually is in execution, which brings us to the shortage of the skilled resources to automate those business processes.
Well, I think to that point, so we've talked about how big the population is and how many apps they need. I don't think we've answered the question of how few in today's modern age, how many few developers there are to satisfy that. Do you recall that number?
Of course I do. That keeps me up at night. It's just 25 million. So 25 million software developers in the world today just to satisfy this demand. And it is obvious that in order to bring this value to the companies and making every organization a low-code company or a software company, if you will, we need to disrupt the market. The market of enterprise software, it needs to be disrupted. And we do believe here at Creatio that low-code, no-code technology, that is exactly what is changing completely and reimagining actually the enterprise software market.
But then, Catherine, I mean, is it really just that simple as, equip the employees with these new tools and the company is transformed?
Okay, so great question. Let's talk a little bit about the market of low-code, no-code, right? As of today, the market is actually split into two categories, if you will. One is no-code, which is platforms and tools for those knowledge workers who have zero IT skills and who can build pretty simple apps using those technologies. These days, pure no-code can hardly be used to build real enterprise apps when you have a ton of integrations, a ton of requirements in terms of governance and access rights and interconnection between different departments. So all these enterprise requirements, they definitely require a more sophisticated approach. And this more sophisticated approach is low-code platforms that do have more comprehensive IT tools to satisfy the requirements of the enterprise software. But at the same time, they need IT skills to be able to build software with using those low-code technology. And what we see on the market is actually that those two types of the platforms are merging. While no-code platforms are given access to more technical tools to code from time to time as well, at the same time, low-code technology is adding more and more no-code tools to give the capabilities for the knowledge workers without IT skills automate their business processes.
But I think that's fascinating. But I guess I see a question coming in, and I've heard this before. Then, and it's a fair question. Is given where we're coming from, and people thinking about low-code, no-code, I think one of the concerns that they have is deep customization possible? Right. The actual, they think of custom software in the old days. You can get exactly, down to a fine grain. Is that possible with no code tools, actually having deep customization?
And that's exactly where the vendors of no code like Creatio are going. That's exactly what our R&D is focused on, to give those tools within the no code environment to provide deep customization, as deep as possible. So when we're talking about custom UI, business process automation, dynamic case management, logic behind the system, this definitely can be done by the no-code tools. The challenge comes when you need to integrate this application that you just built with the in-house software piece, which actually might not even have a documented API. So that's where usually software developers come into play. And that's one of the areas that still needs improvement in terms of the no-code development tools. But we're getting there. So let me answer your question. That's definitely the vision, to give as comprehensive no-code tools to the knowledge workers as possible. So will we be there? Absolutely, yes.
So that lends us up to a question that I wanted to ask, which is, if we're thinking about low-code, no-code, oftentimes it's, some people view it as a tool set, but what about, actual out-of-the-box capabilities as opposed to just having the building blocks? Where do you see that?
Out of the box, Andy, that's, as you and I know, that's what actually brings this phenomenal time to market, because it's always been, and it's always will be, the easiest way to automate your process is if you have exactly the type of the out-of-the-box app that can automate exactly your business process. You just take an app, you start using it, and you're done, right? Yep. So that's the easiest way. That's the fastest time to market, and that's the real acceleration. And then the question arises, so actually, how can we possibly have so many out-of-the-box apps to automate all the unique business processes that exist in all the different industries and all the different business units? So the answer is, here at Creatio, we're building those composable apps. When you take different components, different apps, applications, out-of-the-box solutions and applications, and you combine them together to get the solution which is as close to what you actually need as possible. So this ability to compose your apps like building blocks, like Lego bricks, if you will, and build exactly what you need, that's going to be the fastest time to market. And that's the unique value prop when you not just deliver the no-code, low-code platform, which itself already is a fantastic foundation of any application, but also you have all those different components and apps already built on top of the platform and combined the way you need them to combine into the unique application that your company and your business unit needs.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about, that the new generation of folks that are in the workforce today are, I was thinking when you were saying building blocks and Lego blocks like we grew up with, but for this generation, it's Minecraft blocks. It's so much more powerful than kind of when I was sitting on the ground doing it. And this takes me to, I know we're short on time, and I want to give you an opportunity to answer this question for our audience. But so maybe you can share with us, how do you see the future of enterprise software?
And I just want to add to what you started saying, please. Andy. That is so cool. Minecraft or Roblox, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Those kids and this generation, it is naturals, right? They are naturals. They know already how to build things using software products. And that's exactly what they're doing with Minecrafts and Robloxes of the world today. And this is exactly what they're going to be doing when they come to the workplace. And when
they're not going to be satisfied.
Right? And when they will become those knowledge workers that we've been talking about. So they're going to be building their constructions and their solutions out of the multiple apps and components of the enterprise apps. And that's where the industry is going. And talking about the future of the enterprise software industry, that's exactly where Creatio sees the future is coming. The future is definitely low-code, no-code platform as a foundation of any enterprise software with the out-of-the-box apps and solutions on top of this application, but not just single applications, standalone applications, but those applications that could be combined in a complex solution to automate and to bring value to this particular enterprise and to this particular customer.
So let me offer up our last poll of this session and find out from the audience, what do you see in the audience there as your biggest challenge for your organization in your particular digital transformation process? We've talked a bit about what we've seen in our studies, what we've seen in general. I'd love to hear from you and the specific area of the audience. And maybe as one of our final questions here for you, Catherine, is, we've talked about the future. You've talked about the vision with all of these folks coming into the workforce. We've talked about, the limited number of resources there. What do you see happening to the traditional approach of development or the traditional developers out there? Is there a threat to their job? What's going on with the traditional development, the work that's being done out there? Does it still have a place in the future? What are your thoughts?
It's absolutely no threat at all. Moreover, I can tell you, I have no doubt that software development, that's going to be the hottest job on the market for many years to come. Like for many years, that's going to be the biggest demand in the market we're going to see for the software developers. Actually, to your point, let me tell you the story that actually happened to me yesterday. I talked to one of the HR leaders here in Boston, and he asked me a question. We tried to build, he works for the software company, and they tried to build an outsourcing software team. And he was asking me, do I know any country in the world that actually doesn't have a shortage of software developers and where they can come and hire 100 software developers within a few months? And the answer is no. There is no place in the world like that anymore, because software developers are such a huge demand for software developers. And obviously, the further we go, the more comprehensive technological requirements are going to be, and the skill set of those software developers and the requirements to those skill set is going to be higher and higher, which is fantastic, which is great. But at the same time, when we talk about process automation, case management, when we talk about the interface forms for the business users, these doesn't need to be done by software developers. It needs to be done by knowledge workers. And that's the disruption of the market which is coming. And that's the revolution which is coming. And that's exactly how the enterprise software market these days is changing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that insight and for spending this time with us. I want to thank you all for joining and wish you all the best low-code marathon you can have. Hope to see you at all the future sessions.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the marathon.
Our leadership team. Wonderful discussion, and the chat is just alive with questions. And I think that the key message behind everything, a couple of points that I just found absolutely interesting about this conversation is the ability of low code to help organizations develop faster. There's a lot in the chat about is it going to replace traditional coding? Really, this is a way to augment. Is it going to be around? It's always going to be around. We always have to have the ability to have that combination of both. But what low code brings to the table is really the ability to augment that and alleviate some of that strain that we see on traditional development. But very, very interesting discussion. Very, very interesting questions in the chat. And there's just a ton of information out on our YouTube channel as well as our website talking about those specific topics. So I'd encourage everybody to jump on there and check them out. All right, so we will move into the next section of our marathon today, and that is our practical discussion with Alan Joen from Collier Pickard. Alan brings just a ton of experience. We have over 40 years of experience here with technology since the early days of CRM, like sales logic. Alan has been covering that all the way up to modern technology, reviewing things like Click and HubSpot. Alan has tremendous experience. So I would like to welcome Alan and bring him into this discussion on the do's and don'ts on your way to transforming the future of your business. So Alan, I'll turn it over to you.
On your way to transforming your business for the future. My name's Alan Joen. I'm going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes talking around this topic, focused on do's and don'ts. And at the end, we're going to run a poll to collect opinion. So a bit about myself. I'm an account director at Collier Pickard. I've been in business systems for the last 40 years, and for the last 25 of those specialized entirely in CRM and all the things that surround CRM: marketing, automation, business intelligence, integrations with back office systems. Collier Pickard as a consultancy is a specialist CRM consultancy. So the business has been trading with the same core team since its inception. That team's actually worked together for the whole 25 years that I've been in CRM. We operate as a consultancy. However, most importantly to this discussion today, we operate with best of breed systems as well. And our focus is always on customer success. Over the last couple of years, we have reevaluated what represents best in breed in CRM and have come down strongly in favor of CRM that's driven by low-code process automation. So Creatio is an important part of our product portfolio, and we recommend it for organizations, small, medium organizations, and divisions of large global enterprises where process automation, low-code, and beautifully configured user interfaces in CRM are the drivers for the business need. Now, this lecture is specifically about transformation and the digital transformations that take place in business today. So transformations might be in various shapes and sizes and at various scales. Simply installing a new CRM system represents a digital transformation for a business, either because you're adopting CRM for the first time and moving away from data and lists in Excel spreadsheets, or because you're moving and migrating your CRM system into your second or third generation of CRM usage. Those things represent digital change, and there are some transformation do's and don'ts that will apply to making that CRM deployment successful and changing, having a positive impact on your business. LowCode is another digital transformation that's taking place in businesses today, where for the first time, people in the operational side of your business become responsible for developing processes that impact the way your CRM works, or the way some other aspect of your customer management works. So the concept of citizen developers represents a digital transformation that will have a positive impact on the future of your business. On a wider scale, digital transformations will have exactly the same core do's and don'ts, even if it's at massive scale. For example, when some years back, Rolls-Royce transformed their business from being an aircraft engine manufacturer into being a service company, whereby their message changed from "we make brilliant aircraft engines" to "we help your aeroplanes stay in the sky for longer." And that shift from manufacturing company to service company changed everything about the way the business worked. It changed the way they handled digital information, and it changed the way that their service engineers moved around the globe, always being ready to service aircraft whenever they were on the ground, wherever they were on the ground. So it doesn't matter whether it's a simple transformation in CRM terms or a complex transformation in terms of the whole business ethos. There are do's and don'ts that apply across the board. So let's have a look at the list of my top 3 do's. And these are quite simple to say. However, they require some careful thought in order to get them right. Defining the value of your business is something that requires multiple facets. If you ask the sales director to define the values of the business and the way that this transformation will improve things, that person might refer to growth in revenues, growth in profit margins, transforming the conversion rate from inquiries to orders to improve it. There are multiple ways of defining value. If you look at it from a customer service point of view, value might be, how can I reduce the number of incoming calls? What is it I could do to my service offering that would make our service desk lower cost to operate, because we either have less calls coming in or we become better at handling calls and make our whole operation more effective. So defining the value of the transformation is something that's important. It's clear to understand what the benefits will be, and there are some key phrases that you can use to help you define value. One will be to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's going to have to work differently as a result of the transformation and say, what's in it for me? And be able to answer that question, what's in it for me? If you can articulate a benefit in a clear way against that message, then you've got a long way to defining value for those people who are going to be impacted by change. Another way of defining is to use I can statements. If you tell people that once this transformation is complete, I can work more effectively, or I can work with less delay on collecting information from colleagues, or I can respond to customers more quickly and make my job more satisfying because I make customers happy more often. So what's in it for me and I can statements are a good way of defining value. And the analyze, my point number two, is that you must look at the impact on all the parties that are involved in this transformation. So, for example, it's not just the people who are going to use the new digital data, but the people who are impacted by the use of that digital data. So think about your customers. Is there a better way of delivering a message to customers, and what impact will the transformation that's going on in your business have on them? And create communication plans which alert people to the fact that these changes are happening. So if you're implementing a new low-code system in customer service to help you improve the efficiency of handling incoming calls, let people know in advance, let your customers know in advance that this is what you're doing, and set their expectations that things might change. Maybe there'll be a few hiccups along the route, but bear with us, because we'll work it through and we will be more effective and be able to look after you in a more responsive way as a result of the transformation. The last point in my list of the do's is to understand the skills that you need for success. So expecting people to suddenly adopt a new way of working with digital information is not necessarily the right way to go about a digital transformation, and one that has a positive impact on the future of your business. So you might think about looking at, in an empirical way, what are the skills and talent that I'll need in my new world? And of the people in my team today, how many of those people already have those skills? How many people could be trained and grow into those skills? And how many people will unfortunately be left behind by the transformation and not be able to pick these skills up? And then decide what you need to do with those people. There was an interesting case study from a UK utility company some years back, where they had 120,000 employees. They were going through a digital transformation, which was revolutionizing the whole of the business, the whole of the way the business world worked, including installing IoT measurements from all their devices out in the field, which massively changed the way their engineering operation worked. And they determined that there would be 80,000 jobs required post-transformation. And that sounds like they had to make 40,000 people of the 120 redundant. It turned out to be not the case. They actually had to make 80,000 people redundant, because not all the people that were going to remain after 40,000 redundancies were able to pick up the new digital skills that were required. So in fact, we had to transform. They had to transform their workforce by bringing new people on and displacing others. So my list of do's there is about value, about understanding the impact that this new value proposition will have on all the parties that are involved, both inside your company and outside, and to make sure that you actually have or develop or recruit the right skills to work in your new digital world. If I look at my list of don'ts, they're really quite simple rules. Don't make assumptions. Use voice of the customer programs. Use voice of the employee programs. Create focus groups so that people buy into the change that's about to happen. But don't make assumptions about what it is you think they will want. Actually ask them and take these things into account. My second don't is don't be rigid. Don't refuse to flex. If during the course of a transformation, if during the course of introducing citizen developers and low-code capabilities into your business operation, if you find that the people you'd expected to be able to pick these skills up and run with it are struggling, then be prepared to change your program. Be prepared to introduce new training. Be prepared to delay your original expectations on dates or costs. Be prepared to flex based on progress. This would be a conventional message that went with an agile development in IT terms. So refusing to flex, sticking to the plan rigidly is not good when you're trying to make a digital transformation that will positively impact the future of your business. The third in my list is not to underestimate change. Change is not, in this context, I'm not talking about a change management program where you might appoint a Prince 2 qualified project manager to manage your change process. This is about actually understanding change in terms of the impact it has on the business. What will the business look like as a result of your low-code introduction? What will your business look like in terms of the digital change because you've introduced new CRM systems? And how can you represent that change in a successful light right the way across the whole organization? And I'll pick up on a comment about underestimating change in a second as I close this session. So those are my don'ts. They're quite simply: don't make assumptions, don't refuse to flex, and don't underestimate change. Now, some years ago, we introduced CRM into a financial services organization. They were global investment managers, and at the end of a couple of years of significant transformation, whereby client reporting was taken out of Excel and Excel pivot tables and derived from reporting from CRM, where note-taking and sharing of client information and investment opportunity information around the globe was moved out of Word and into CRM. Some significant changes, some workflow processes, some process automation that revolutionized the way the business was working. The senior partner in charge of that operation made this comment at the end. And I think that kind of reinforces my point that underestimating change is a mistake. So the senior management of the company need to be involved in your transformation. They need to understand the impact it will have on everybody. And my list of do's there: understanding value, understanding impact, and understanding the talent that you need, are all part of this need to persevere with utter singular determination. So that covers the material that I had prepared to present to you in this session. Your opinion matters, and we've prepared a short survey. Let me move that out of the way. We've prepared a short survey and would like you to express your opinion on those three do's: understanding value, impact, and talent. What's your opinion on the importance and the priority of those three? So thank you for watching today, and please complete the survey.
So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with our roundtable discussion. So I am going to be joined by some of my esteemed colleagues from our partner channel, and I'd like to introduce them as they're joining the room here momentarily. We'll see them coming in, and so I'm joined today by wow, look at these guys! What a handsome group of gentlemen here. Welcome. So today, folks, I'm being joined by Yoav Sinir. Yoav is the global head of digital partnerships at Amdocs, has a tremendous amount of experience, so always a pleasure to have you here, Yoav. I'm also joined, thank you. Also joined by Tolga Artan. Tolga is the chairman of Lucky Eye, joining us from Istanbul. So we've got a vast audience here today covering all areas of the globe. And last, but certainly not least, is Basil Malik. And Basil is, he is our CRM practice leader at Blytheco, our dear partner in the US. So welcome, Basil.
Thank you. Love
all right. Excellent. So we'll go ahead. You guys ready for this discussion?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you know when we were kind of preparing for this, you know, we said, you know, are we going to be prepared for, you know, this discussion? And my guess is that we'll have more to say than we have time. So we're never an audience short of comments. So it's great to have you guys here. You know, we've been having a great session for day one here of our marathon, and really talking about the benefits of digital transformation, how you know, having a strong strategy is very important. But also, you know, on the flip side of that, we understand that there's going to be challenges along the way. You know, whether those challenges are you know, related to budget, related to you know, capability, related to personnel. We know that there's going to be challenges along the way, and you know, what we were hoping to discuss with the team here is, you know, what are those challenges and how are we overcoming them in different parts of the globe? So, you know, we've kind of prepared a couple of questions here to get the conversation started. And, you know, I think a great way to start is, you know, why don't we start with Basil on this one? You know, what do you think are the challenges surrounding digital transformation today, as you see them when you're dealing with your clients?
Honestly, it's more around the topic of the actual concept of digital transformation at a very high level. If you look at digital transformation in some areas, people are treating it almost like it's a cute buzzword. So they're not approaching it with the necessary reverence that they need to. So they're approaching it thinking that it's going to be this simple thing, when in reality, it is truly taking many aspects, if not all aspects, of what you're doing as an organization, and then applying some sort of pivot or hard change to what the status quo is.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair statement. Guys, what do you think? Yoav?
So first of all, digital transformation it's just hard, right? It's very complex. It's not natural, especially for companies that what we call that are not digital native. So not companies like Amazon or Uber, right? So most companies in the world are not digital native companies. So it's hard for them. Second, it's crossing many different areas. It's touching people, it's touching culture, the business, the way you run your business, processes and technology. And the last thing is it's very big. And if you try to approach it in a traditional waterfall or long-term planning approach, which most organizations do because it's so complex, by the time you're done planning, you need to replan. So there's no way to do it in one chunk. You need to do it almost like an agile development, although it has such a cross-organization impact. So as I said, it's very hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people typically don't like change either. Like that's one of the biggest challenges that we see too, on top of what you just said, Yoav, is people don't want to disrupt their business. They're so paralyzed and they're afraid. They've heard the horror stories of people going on this digital transformation journey and it turning out to be a complete disaster because they were ill prepared or they didn't approach it with that necessary level of planning associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it is a strategy, right? And it's an evolving strategy. It's not something that's a one and done type of thing. It's something that needs to be evolving. And we had an analogy. It's too far back in the chat now. I can't quote it exactly, but they said digital transformation is like you know, training for a marathon, right? Like it's a marathon, and you have to keep you have to keep at it because it's iterative. So Tolga, in your area, what are you seeing as those biggest challenges, like as you're supporting your customer?
I think the biggest challenge is coming from the management team, I believe, because their support is very important with this vision. And if they have the vision of transforming their businesses, then it goes easier. And it's a long, as you mentioned, it's a long run. And they have to understand this is a long run and we will support it anyway. Whether we have some obstacles during this journey, our support should continue. And also, in some cases, we are facing like the concept between the age brackets of the employees. The more we face with the young people, they are more open to change, and they want to change the organization. They want to change everything. But in some cases, there should be a balance where the organization needs to find. I think these type of challenges are the most important parts we are facing here in our country.
Mm-hmm. And so that it brings up a good point. Like, so we're hearing a theme, right? It's it's a strategy. It's something that needs to be given its due attention throughout the entire process. So I'd be interested in finding out, guys, like why do digital transformation initiatives fail? Then we see so many companies that may start to go down a path and then end up failing. What do you see as those biggest contributors to that? Obviously strategy, but are there other contributing factors to why digital initiatives fail?
Mm-hmm. And what I've definitely seen is a hesitancy that's kind of causing people to try and live in both worlds. They want digital transformation, but they also don't want change. So they're trying their best to consistently use the tools of the past while the rest of the company is trying to drive strategy transformation tools and enablement going forward. But they're so stuck on what they have and what they're used to that they don't want to give it up for fear of what could ultimately be even a better solution for them long term.
Absolutely. So in terms, so we see, strategy, culture, fear. What else? What else? Tolga, what are you seeing? What other contributing factors?
I think openness is also something that we have to bring on the table, because the people should be the employees or the people inside the organization or the partners inside the organization should understand the value and all the processes clearly to go through this change, I think, because the more it's open, the more it's understandable, and people can get used to this idea of change easily, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Yoav, from your perspective, so we know that there's challenges, and we know that there could be fear, there could be culture problems, there could be challenging the status quo, right? To Basil's point earlier. Based on seeing those challenges, let's look at it from the flip side. We're always trying to weigh the pros and cons of things. What are the drivers then for digital transformation? What are those drivers that are leading people to take a look at those challenges and say the benefits outweigh the challenge?
So I think that first of all, you can see the driver of transformation are everyone you deal with, right? It's your customers, it's your employees, and your partners or vendors. Everyone has an expectation today for an organization, a company, whether they work there, whether they buy from it or they serve it, to be more digital, because and Tolga referred to it earlier, is the new generation of users. So whether I'm a user as an employee or user as a customer, I expect the experience that the organization provides or the system that I interact with to be just like anything else I do, whether it's an Uber on my phone or an Amazon or a Netflix, right? So most of the people, not only the ones that are coming into the workforce right now, but the millennials that are now in the mid management or going into upper management, and they are born into a digital world. They were born, as they say, with a device in their hand, right? So that's one. Now, and the standard, by the way, is those digital native companies. We said most companies are not, but setting the standards are the Netflix, the Ubers, the Amazons, right? So it's a new standard that's being set as a standard of service. And even your vendors or your partners expect to interact with you in a digital manner, right? So that's that. And that was, by the way, pre-COVID. Now, if you look at the past year and a half, that has been significantly accelerated, and everything that we or some leadership in different roles were saying, well, that's not possible. You can't work 100% remote. It will never work, right? Or we cannot do call center fully distributed because you have to be in the call center. Well, guess what? It all happened. So, and in order to do that, digital transformation or use of digital tools have been a necessity, and it was do or die. Now that we've gone there, there's no way back. So all of those trends have been significantly accelerated, and you can't turn back the wheel. No one will get the no. So this transformation has started, even if we didn't plan on it. Now it's we're in the landslide, right? You got to control it somehow.
Well, and then to your point, Yoav, you're talking about pre-COVID versus where we're at today. And another thing that's also driving change and the need for digital transformation beyond COVID is also competition, and whether or not you're going to be reactive or proactive in the competition. Do you wait to hear what a competitor is doing before you take action? Or do you want to be the leader in your given industry? And then based off of that strategy, that planning, that initiative that you have, that can kind of set the precedent for how you even approach digital transformation. COVID basically exacerbated that need across all industries, because now people that didn't embrace digital transformation prior to COVID are seeing the ramifications of that. Sure, there's a lot of success, but if you look at adapting prior to, how much more magnified or amplified could that success have been? And I think that's also what's driving a lot of the change and the need behind digital transformation as well.
Absolutely. And it's, you bring up a good point, Basil. When we look at competition, it's not only are we going to stay ahead with them or keep up, it's a matter of survival at this point. If you look to like financial services industry, you have fintech that's coming out, just offering all kinds of services. To Tolga's and Yoav's point earlier, right? It's millennial now, right? It's you've got a younger user, digital first users that want that experience, and those fintech organizations are starting to chip away. From those big banks, bringing customers over. So now those big banks are focused to become more technology-driven organizations throughout their industry. So it's not only to stay ahead, but you also have to keep up because it's constantly evolving. It's constantly new applications coming out, new capabilities. So you constantly have to evolve. So I think I would like to kind of poll the audience on that right now and lead us to our first poll here. So let's have a look. I went back one too many. Let's start a poll. How often are you, not the quiz, but we're going to the poll first. How often are you refining your digital transformation goals? And we'll wait for that to launch here in the chat, and we'll take a look at those results as we move forward. So we have a couple of options here. Is it every quarter, every 6 months, every 12 months, every 24 months, or you're just not on a digital path right now? So I'd be interested to hear from the audience. We got a vast audience across the globe here, so I'm sure that will be interesting. So as we let the audience kind of develop the answers to that, why don't we go into the second part of our discussion, guys, and let's talk a little bit about culture. So how do we build a culture that embraces, a digital transformation strategy? So I guess I'll start with Tolga on this one. So Tolga, how can you develop, that culture within organizations so that they're digital ready, right? How do you make them how do we not make them, but how do we encourage them or show them the way to digital transformation? How do you develop that culture?
I think it's all about aligning people through the goals of digital transformation. And it's not an easy task, as Yuval and Basil has mentioned before, but the thing here is, I think, as management support brings people feel more open and autonomous about what they are doing and what they want to do, and what the other people are expecting from them, especially the customers or the suppliers or the partners. So bringing value for each of these type of people will be driving the employees inside the organization to keep them happy, I believe. And the more happy they are, the more value they are bringing on the table. And this is very important for the digital transformation process, I believe. I think also they want to understand what type of impact they should be bringing on the table. And this type of measuring the process or understanding the impact of what they are doing is also very important to make them believe the vision or to make them believe the idea. And also, I think aligning the different requirements of people is also very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's an excellent statement that you just made there, Tolga. So when we look at digital transformation, it always has to be tied back to what benefit that's going to have. That's one thing that I've seen as I talk to customers, right? They'll start to look at a strategy and, it's almost like it's a list of nice to haves or a list of things that, capabilities that we wish we had on our list. But if we're not tying those back to actual business benefits, it's going to be hard for an organization to kind of embrace that unilaterally across the board. So that's an excellent point. Before we dive into that one a little deeper, I just wanted to share the results of the last poll. Now that I've got the technology down, guys, me, I have to kind of figure that out as I go. But so how often are you refining your digital transformation goals? Well, 33% said every quarter, which I love to see, right? Because I think that that's how fast business happens. Maybe even faster. Yoav, you're telecommunications. You could tell us a little something about that, how quick that has to change. And then we had 25% for every 6 months, 22% for every 12 months, 2.8% for every 24 months, and 16.7% say that they're not on a digital path yet. Get with us after this call because we need to talk to you.
Yes. I have to say that I'm not surprised about every quarter, although I would argue, by the way, that it's even a shorter time frame. I'll get back to it in a second.
I would agree with that too.
I'm very surprised, by the way, the fact that 16 or 17% are not even on a digital path. That's very surprising to me in general, especially post-COVID. Now, speaking of the quarter and telecommunication, I, as a company that is working in telecommunication for 30 years, and telecommunication has been known as an industry that on the one hand is on the front of technology, on the other hand takes a lot of time to get things done because it's very complex and a lot of legacies involved and so on and so forth. We and our customers in the past used to drop things into production or new features or new run programs on a resolution of 1 to 3 years and drop things into production, like major production once in a quarter or more, right? In the past few years, in support of digital transformation that we're doing all around the world with all of our customers, we're doing iteration and dropping things to production almost on a weekly basis. Okay? So that's the result. Now, I'm not talking about rebuilding the storefront, right? But on gradually, you need to chip at it, right? We said it's a marathon. Actually, it's a marathon with a moving target. So you need to continue to chip at it and drop things in production or do changes on a weekly and monthly basis and try. It's a startup mentality, right? You need to try, get the feedback, adapt, fail, and go with the flow.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're also speaking to the resource of people. Like if you're going to have success with any level of digital transformation within your culture, within the DNA of the company, you need to have that buy-in from the people that ultimately are going to be on the other side of that digital transformation. One thing that Tolga mentioned earlier was the idea of culture and having to be from the top down, and that's a start. The other thing is the messaging to the people within the organization and ensuring that they understand that we're not going to take the company as it exists today with all the success that we've had in the past and we're going to drastically change it. No, we're going to look at digital tools that create enablement across the entirety of our organization. We're not going to take this thing, a square peg, and shave it to fit into a round hole. We're going to adjust the hole so that the peg fits properly. That way, you're not risking skewing the culture that has led to your company's success to date.
And it goes back, by the way, to the question you asked earlier, Eric, about how do you adapt or how do you build the organization, right? So part of it is, as Tolga said, and you said also, is you need to support, you need top management, top down with the vision, right? And make sure it fits to the existing organization. The second is you need to instill a startup mentality, even if it's a big organization, a Fortune 500, Fortune 100, right? You need to instill a startup mentality, some of it by incentivizing, not only enable, but also incentivize your existing employees to learn more, whether it's technology, business, customer experience, whatever it is, right? So you need to help your employees transform themselves so they can become a startup employee. And also what is theoretically easy, but actually it's not that easy, you can hire startup ready generations, right? On the one hand, you get them ready. On the other hand, sometimes it's very hard for a more conservative organization to brand itself in a way that it's attractive to the younger generation, because they want to go and work for the Ubers of the world, and they don't want to deal with all the processes and the legacy system that a traditional telco used to have, right? Let's put it this way. So they don't want to go there. So in order to attract those people, those generation, the millennials, the Zs even soon, you need to make yourself attractive. You need to rebrand yourself, which actually is also a part of the digital transformation, right?
That's actually a great point. And as we think about, before we jumped into the poll results, we were starting to talk about, kind of the benefits and the how do we express the value of digital transformation? Well, that's a good point that we kind of forget, right? We might forget, the workforce that we have now, it also wants to be empowered, right? And they want to work for organizations that are empowered with technology. So we have a couple of good questions in the chat that are just about this as well. So I'll combine two together here because they kind of flow together. We'll throw this out. Tolga, Basil, Yoav, you can just jump in. But the question is, how do you measure the success of digital transformation initiatives? And then how do you understand what impact that's having on your organization? So how do you start measuring that? Like, what do you think are going to be those points today? And where do you see that going in the future? Like, will those measurements change as we move forward? So guys, jump in. First one to the table. Who's going to be the lion? Who's going to?
Well, I'll jump in and just say that typically when you're talking about measurement, that's all involved within the planning stage. I mean, you're not gonna start sprinting towards the finish line without knowing where the finish line is. So therefore, you should be able to have KPIs, things that are measurable in place. The strategy of it all comes into play as well. Planning and strategy, they go hand in hand. So if you're just taking off without any idea of where you're going, you're going to run a serpentine pattern, and it's going to be the single most inefficient path that you'll take to go from where you are today to that end goal. And that end goal should always be to be moving, and your measurement of that goal should also adapt as needed.
Absolutely. Tolga, what do you think? I see that you have a great point to make here.
I think there are some approaches in our country and in Europe also about the digital readiness for companies and organizations. There are some, with these approaches, people trying to understand how ready they are for such a transformation. But when I look at the coming 10 years, this decade, I think while trying to measure it, it will be like a state of survival. Because if you don't change, then you cannot adapt yourself to your customers or your employees. So you have to create a journey. You have to create an experience for your employees and your customers so that you can survive. Right now, in most of the countries, people are talking about how the consumers are behaving, or what are their considerations for purchasing after COVID or during COVID. And it changes so rapidly. So lots of things that we were talking before COVID has changed considerably. And I think it has helped us to accelerate everything. Speed becomes the most important part for any type of organization. If you are agile, if you can act on it, if you can measure it, then you may find some way of surviving within these 10 years, I believe. But if you don't have these values or these type of organizational behaviors, then you may face difficulty in which market you are. It doesn't make any difference. So it can be in all different sectors, but you have to understand how to change internally and externally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I would add to that we said it's a lot of sprints, right? And so when you want to run toward a destination like a KPI, so optimally you would like to run toward the nearest point that can make the biggest impact, right? So very easy to say, very hard to do. But if you know what is your biggest cost center, what your biggest upside, and if you find a way to cheapen it and make even small changes within that big KPI, that is your likely target. Now, what we've seen, at least in our industry, it's usually coming to around a few areas. First of all, is customer, right? Whether it's acquisition or retention, which are two very major cost and benefit impact to their communication in many service companies, right? So that's usually one very major KPI that we see. Then, of course, we have customer satisfaction and NPS, or all of those acronyms that that eventually measure how the customer likes the service, their propensity to churn or not, and so on and so forth, which comes to customer lifetime value or customer value, growth potential, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's cost changes or affecting your cost structure, if you can minimize that. So those are the typical suspects that you will see on the KPI list for digital transformation usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important fact. Let me take another quick poll of the audience here, because I want to bring them into this conversation, because we're a geographically dispersed group here, aren't we? We're Basil, Yoav, and I are here in the U.S., but Yoav, you've spent a lot of time Israel. Tolga, you're in Istanbul. I want to take a poll of the audience, and we want to know, where are you currently located? Europe, North America, South America, APAC, Africa, because we want to understand, what are those challenges in different areas. So poll is in the chat, guys. If you could just chime in, and we'll let my esteemed colleagues know where the audience is residing, and then we can add in some regional flavor. And as the audience is filling in that particular poll, I like the way Basil, that you had said that, right? Like it's you have to establish a baseline, right? When you're looking at how to measure the success of digital transformation, we have to create a baseline. And Yoav, to your point, looking at KPIs, you got to decide what you want to track, right? It could be anything, right? Different things mean different things to organizations, but you have to decide what KPIs you're going to track, build that baseline, and that's how you're going to measure the success of digital transformation. Where was it before we started, and where was it after we completed this? And and it's going to be iterative. You're going to set new goals, right? Every depending upon the industry, could be weekly, could be quarterly, as we saw in the poll, right? We're going to be setting those KPIs and creating that baseline to the next stage within that particular journey. So great discussion on that, guys. All right, so we have results of the poll. 36% Europe, 22% North America, 10% South America, and 20% APAC. So that's a pretty good mix across the board there. We'll have to get JC and the team to work on South America a little more, 10%. We need to bump that up. So that's good. So for the audience, guys, when we're talking about challenges, maybe regionally, what do we say are how can countries master the digital transformation process across the globe? And and again, I know we're all supporting global customers, but what are the recommended best practices for people regionally? And why don't we start with we'll start with Basil. What do you see?
Honestly, the recommended best practice is know exactly why you're getting involved with the digital transformation, because if you don't know the why, you're not going to be able to establish that baseline. A lot of customers that we work with, some of them customers don't know what they don't know. So we're really doing our best to educate them and be the stewards to leading them to success. And the first thing that we start off with is trying to understand where they're trying to get to. And if they can't answer that, then that's the first problem, the first barrier that we have to overcome. So if they don't have significant pain points that they're trying to identify, then how do you know what exactly you're setting out to accomplish? And then if you can't tell that, then that's where we have to start peeling back layers of the onion to truly figure out what's costing you X, Y, or Z across the various aspects of your organization. And then what exactly can technology do to alleviate these pain points?
It all starts there. Absolutely. Tolga, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree, Basil, because Basil, as it's a total understanding of what can you achieve at the beginning while starting the journey. But throughout the journey, there are lots of changes around the organization also. So keeping these cycles in small steps with the long-term vision it's very important to achieve, keeping all aligned with the organization and the other people around the organization. This is something very difficult to achieve, I believe. And also, I believe digital readiness of the country is also very important in this part, because changing an organization is not sufficient if you want to accelerate the operation. Your dependencies should also be very connected with your approach and with your activities, so that you can, with the help of them, you can achieve lots of things. For example, in our country, e-commerce boomed huge during the COVID space, but with the help of the logistics companies and the totally digital integration between the e-commerce companies and these logistics companies became bring a huge role in this success. And there are lots of new startups grown in this area in the country based on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Well, I think I'm getting the 2-minute warning here, guys. So I'm going to leave the final comment here to Yoav, and we'll have to wrap up this discussion. And we could have a whole marathon day of this panel right here. But Yoav, I'll let you wrap up our discussion.
So I'll try to keep it short, right? We're talking about best practices. So on top of what my esteemed colleague already covered, I would say that it's first of all, it's about IT enabling the business. So IT must provide the velocity for the business to do their thing by digital transformation, right? And then you have automation. Automation is a must in digital transformation. And it comes down to all the buzzwords we know: LowCode, BPM, RPA, your favorite, say, Eric, right? Everyone is a developer, right? So that's key. And by that, and it goes back to what we discussed earlier about organization, reskilling, retooling, the startup mentality. If you enable that, so, and everyone is a developer, so everyone feel like an entrepreneur, and the business can do things without IT, which in the past was taboo, but now it's great because you need so many working hands, you're always short of staff. And that empower the people that can attract the Gen X's and the millennials and the Gen Z's we talked about. So it's all tied together, right? So that's, I would say, organizational velocity, automation, organization enablement.
Perfect. That just put the exclamation point on everything. Yoav, that was amazing. Gentlemen, as always, such a pleasure having you guys, on these sessions. I hope that the audience was able to, gain some insight on how to overcome challenges associated with digital transformation. And for those of you not on that path yet, you've got 3 gentlemen on the call right here, as well as myself, that would be loving to talk to you sometime soon.
Absolutely.
So, gentlemen, thank you again. Please join us for other sessions here throughout the course of our marathon. All right. Thanks again.
Guys.
All right. So we're going to have a brief quiz, guys, out here to the audience on what we've learned today. The quiz will be, sent out to the audience. We'll have a winner, a few winners announced tomorrow on our session. So there's incentive to join tomorrow. We'll give away fabulous prizes. So the quiz itself, just is a simple question. When was the term low-code first coined? And you can take that quiz and put your answers in the chat. And we will share a nice prize with somebody on tomorrow's session. So there's a little incentive for you to join again tomorrow, above and beyond the great information that we're going to be supplying. You heard Catherine mention in her discussion earlier about the state of low-code, no-code statistic study that we had done recently. So we would encourage you to go out and download this report. I know it was shared in the chat earlier, but we really want to ensure that we give you the ability to kind of download this report. It's phenomenal, just a survey of 1,000 business leaders, and really introspective look into the state of low code. We also would encourage you to go out and try Creatio 7.18. This is our most recent release. It's available now on a free trial. So you can head out to our website or take the QR code that you see on the screen here, and it'll take you directly out to where you can download our free trial. And you can see the power of low code firsthand. We also would encourage you to subscribe to Creatio's YouTube channel. There's a lot of great information that's out there. I know we had a lot of industry-specific questions. We have just a ton of content that's out there and available for you to look at, and take your time and listen to those recordings. We also have our podcasts, our LowCode Talks. These are available on any of the platforms that you see at the bottom of the screen. Great opportunity to continue conversations like you're hearing today. And just by way of day 2 of our marathon, again, we're encouraging you to join as we're having just great presentations and really providing a lot of thought leadership from key industry experts. And we encourage you to join day by day. Tomorrow's session will be focused on how to create a low-code company and embracing that everyone a developer concept. So great sessions, another 4. I would encourage everybody to join. I will be there. I hope to see you there as well. So thank you very much. And we really appreciate you joining and spending some time with us today. And we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.